Well, actually, does anyone want to ask questions before I record?
I don't mind asking questions after you're recording.
Okay.
Um, my main question was just so for the group members, am I right in thinking that we'll divide into our entire group will divide into three groups? One doing self-regulation tool, one doing the procedural accuracy checklist, and one doing the setting event slash motivating operation assessment tool. And we'll each post kind of individual um, checklists and assessments that we come up with, and then we'll combine what's been done or decide what has been done the best and use that. Is that correct?
1 second.
Okay.
Rebecca, I'm good with you doing the procedural checklist. I saw your
Yeah.
message.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yep. So there'll be the staff, they'll be developing the staff regulation tool, the procedure accuracy, and then the SCMO tool. And so, yep, break your group into thirds.
Okay.
And then in those three groups, like, does each group member say I'm in like the SSR group, right? Is each one of us like three or four making our own and then figuring out which one we like, or is it like that group makes one and the other group
No,
makes?
each person makes one, and then you look at what are the characteristics? Like, are there some that like when you're comparing, like, oh, I really like how that person did that. I really like, and then combining it into one and submitting that.
Okay, I see. That makes more sense. And then are we like sending anything about the feedback and stuff, or is it just all gonna be like just do you want it all discussed like on the discussion board?
Yeah, you just saw on the discussion board. You just submit your finalized one. Hey, Cynthia, I just wanted to let you know that it's being recorded just so that Tara can share the recording with her teammates or group mates.
I had a question. I saw on the assignments, is each of our individual assessment due in the 6th, 18th on the discussion board, right? Did I get that correct?
Well, no, it's gotta be this week, and then you have to submit it into Canvas.
But all of it's submitted like our individual assessment tools, like each of us submit the discussion board in our group by
Yep.
tomorrow.
And then, I mean, work it out with your group. I mean, but it's just that the assignment's due by the 23rd in Canvas. All three of them are due.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was one of my questions too. Um, so for all three of them, I guess that yeah, it's a question for I guess all three parts. Are we using like jargon or are we just using like simple language?
This is going to be for the trainer to use, so it can be a little bit more. You can use more jargon since it's not for the trainees.
Okay.
The first two assignments those are really for trainers, but really it's gearing towards developing that training material.
Mhm. And then like the structure of the sorry, I'm like reading through the chat and stuff. The structure of the like tool for any like really any of them, not like a specific one. It's like we'll start with like instructions, the checklist of whatever, and then um like next steps. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that works. I mean, Yeah,
Okay. So it's only really be like what, like page to maybe 3 pages?
yeah, each one should only be about a page long.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, it doesn't seem very, like it would be
Like a
very long.
procedural accuracy checklist for high probability response sequence should be less than a page. Um, your SEMO should be a page, so they shouldn't be very long at all.
Okay, just want to make sure that we're not like too simplifying it and then just credit somewhere.
Nope, I think what the groups this term are doing are more overcomplicating things rather than, I think that's more the trend this term.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. Um,
Sorry, I'm going to jump in really quick just to go back to, so I see on the instructions it says to explain either how we adapted the assessment tool or to explain who created the perfect tool for what to submit. But were you saying that part should only be in the discussion board rather than what we submit?
Yep.
Thank you.
And I imagine what's going to end up is you're going to make one based upon a bunch of pieces from a bunch of different peoples and not just one person's, because no one makes a perfect one. It's learning from each other.
Yeah.
yeah, so we're not sending any like video recording of us going over anything. It's just basically everything is discussed on the discussion board.
Yep. And all that you're submitting is
Final of it.
yep.
Cool. And then one of my group members wants to know, does the SSR section sound like the form should be filled out during a supervision meeting or during like the initial training?
So it's during the supervision sessions. And so really it's really the supervisor really determining where they are emotionally, but also where staff is emotionally as well. So it's really in the moment, not during training.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know if you guys could hear me. I've been having a little bit of trouble connecting. But when I jumped in, I know Tara was asking something and you mentioned something about not overdoing it and kind of simplifying it. In what area were we talking about?
All three checklists.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to, it doesn't have to be pages and pages. It can be a one page for each one.
And all three is a checklist, correct? If I'm reading it, well, like a table.
Yes, it's yeah, checklist.
Okay. And then we add the instructions on how to use that checklist.
Yep, so each one of them should start out with like a title and then directions on how to fill it out, have your checklist, and then for example, for a procedural accuracy checklist, there should be a place to score. Or for like the emotion regulation one, it may be what are next steps or something like that.
Perfect. Okay. Let me write those notes.
One of my group member wanted to know if the discussion board is being graded.
No.
Okay.
I never go into your group's discussion boards. I figured that's your group's brainstorming. So what's being graded are the three tools.
Okay, cool. Okay, another question. Are we also writing intervention steps in the PAC-C?
What do you mean?
I don't know.
I mean, that's what a procedural accuracy checklist is it actually goes through the steps of implementing the intervention. And that's your assessment tool to determine the fidelity of the implementation of the intervention. So I think that question is, I imagine it's yes, because that's what a procedural accuracy checklist is.
Okay, making sure. Alright. And do you recommend doing a Likert scale? Like I guess can all of them be, are all of them together, should they be like the same like ratings type of thing, like a yes, no, or they could be different?
Um,
Or like a
I
Likert scale, I think
think
was one of them.
I would not do a per pack as a Likert scale. I don't
Yeah,
know how to do that.
right.
So, but I think maybe the social emotional one can be.
Okay.
Emotion regulation one definitely can be.
Mhm.
Um, but they don't have to be all the same. But yes, I would encourage teams not to use a Likert scale for the pack.
I just wanted to confirm for this assignment, we don't have to split into our subgroups where we have one group develop the first draft and then the second subgroup do the edits along with a final video feedback meeting, since we'll be putting it all together.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. So the contribution log is the same format, it looks like, as the other ones with it split up. Should we just edit that to suit what we did for this assignment?
People will be giving feedback based upon, it just looks different. You won't be doing the verbal feedback, but you will be providing written feedback or comments. So.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Just to clarify, and maybe I'm thinking of another section, but I'm pretty confident it was that for the pack on the PowerPoint, I think the instructor said not to use yes or no and lead it more to a Likert scale. So is that okay to use yes or no?
Oh, for the PAC-C, maybe that's where that question came from.
Yeah.
I just had before.
Like it was in the audio recording of that PowerPoint where I think even two voices overlap in that. I just can't remember what slide it is, where one of them saying you could use these three different grading scales, but then the instructor that kind of talks throughout the whole PowerPoint, she's stating I would not recommend yes or no.
Yeah. For the PAC-C, right? I think I do remember that.
Yes.
That's where I
So I
think
guess I'm a little confused because I don't, it's literally the voices over record each other. So which one do we do?
I would stick with yes or no for PAC-C.
Perfect.
I had a quick question. So feedback wise for this assignment, I know like in our previous ones we've done, someone does the writing, someone gives feedback. How are we giving feedback? Are we giving feedback to all of our peers on their documents or on the discussion board? Like how about, are we not giving feedback to each other?
Well, you are giving feedback because there's going to be discussion around particular aspects of the tool that each person made. And then you will come up with some final version. Maybe one person you're like, yeah, let's submit this. And you're providing feedback about why you really like it.
Okay.
But you will be providing feedback.
Okay, thank you.
so the feedback is going to be given by the whole group, like individually to each thing, or like with the group.
Would probably stick with the thirds because those are the people who are actually focusing on that particular one. This is a little bit different because we did this a little bit different. So I think that's where some of the confusion. So during a typical non-condensed term, each group develops these like as a group. And so just like we were doing, you would develop like one subgroup would develop one and submit it to the other one. So given that just the condensed nature of the summer course, it's just formatted a little bit different. So I think that's where the confusion around the instructions are coming. And so forth is typically it's not on a discussion board, it's handled just like your two previous group assignments. It's just, and
Yeah, so if we chose to not do it on, because I feel like we've been doing really well with doing it like on Word and like doing the embedded feedback and stuff and using like GroupMe. Because I feel like we tried to kind of use like discussion board format and it wasn't really working as well, or like an email format. We found it easier like this way. Is it okay if we chose not to put it on the discussion board and do it in our own like way?
yep, that's fine.
Okay, perfect.
I had a question for the critical items on the PAXI, and on the PowerPoint it says that it's explaining the critical items and it says they're not essential to the accurate implementation of the intervention itself. And then the next bullet point says we need to measure that it's being implemented correctly.
Yeah.
Are-
Like I said, I think there's a little bit of confusion with this assignment just because a couple of different things happened this term. This term, we actually gave you your intervention. Typically, the group has to come up with their intervention. So, but it always had to be an antecedent. And so oftentimes groups would choose like functional communication training or like non-contingent reinforcement. So let's use like functional communication as an example. Procedure accuracy checklist may have non-critical items, like making sure you have the identified reinforcer there, but then the PAC-C would be just the critical items that you want to make sure the staff implement with fidelity. So it might be making once the student you prompt the response. So that's going to be a critical item. Staff reinforces, provides the identified reinforcer following the prompted response and so forth. So there's critical items, and then there's some that you want to see happen, like maybe a preference assessment was done or something like that beforehand that aren't critical. So I think it's going to be a little bit harder for, now that I'm actually thinking about this, and I got to share it with the other instructors, for high probability instructional sequence, that's going to be a little bit harder. Just due to there's not a lot of non-critical steps if you're running a high probability instructional sequence. It's sort of like you give the prompt. If the person does it, you provide the next prompt. And so there's not a lot of critical or non-critical items. And so I think it's just the nature of us trying to get this assignment so that it's not overwhelming, so that people had to do 3 separate tools in the time frame we had. And then also not taking into consideration what the impact of giving high probability instructional sequence would be in terms of that particular assignment. So don't worry about it. Develop a procedure accuracy checklist for high probability instructional sequence.
Okay, so I don't need to like mark or like which ones I would consider critical and non-critical.
No, don't worry about it.
Okay, and then also I feel like I'm a little confused. This might be a more conceptual issue than like the actual assignment, but permanent product for high probability instructional sequence, like I'm a little confused about that. Like is it not in some circumstances them engaging in a certain behavior? Is there an instance in which there is not a permanent product of this intervention?
Yes.
Okay. So
Because especially if the high P task does not produce a permanent product.
Okay, so as far as the permanent product review goes for this checklist, what exactly would that look like?
You can just put not applicable,
Okay.
but at least the
Okay.
team considered it and had a discussion about it. But if it's not applicable, it's not applicable.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Professor. Good evening. Well, maybe, yeah, good evening. I have a quick question. With the assessment tools coming up, I was reading the instructions, and I know it says 1/3 of the class will have to do the 3 things. I had a classmate ask a question. Are we allowed to pair up and do it, or it has to be individually done? Like if it's 11 or 10 of us, 3 people would do one, and 3 people would do the other, and then 3 people would do like 4 people would do the last one, or 2 people can decide to do one and put it out for the group.
I'm fine either way.
You're fine either way? Okay.
I'm fine either way.
Okay. You're fine either way. Okay. All right.
Luisa, and also
Yes, Louisa.
okay, he also said that each it has to be only like he prefers 1 page per subject.
Okay, okay.
So
So
it doesn't need to be
the
that long.
PACC can be 1 page, and then the SEMO can be 1 page, and okay, the SRR can be 1 page too. Okay, all right, understandable. Okay, all right. Okay, and I think we can tell the group that too, because I know Lisbeth asked today, and I was giving her what the instructions said. Okay,
I'm also recording this, so I can.
okay, so we can send it. Okay, that's good. Okay, that's good.
So if we did choose to do it that way and that like 3 people contributed to one checklist, then that would kind of mean that we would be adapting, right? Not adopting, because there wouldn't be 3 to choose from.
Yep, it's fine. I mean, the point is that you're collaborating, right? And
Okay.
providing feedback. I mean, that's, yep, I'm not.
Okay.
So then like, could I meet with like my 2 other members that are in my little group and just like discuss it with them, like over like, Zoom?
Yep,
Just go
that would
through
be
it
fine.
together.
Yep.
Cool. And then last question, for the SE/MO, actually for both the PAC-C and the SEMO, if they receive like a low score, we should write next steps for those as well. Like, what happens next, basically, if they do receive that low score.
Well, I consider the PAC and the PAC-C a little bit different than the SEMO. I would want to know next steps for the SEMO, because if there are setting events that are impacting, what are we going to do? So your client comes in hungry, right? Like, or if your staff comes in hungry, right? Okay, how are we going to address that? Like you can like, hey, why don't you go have a snack? Why don't you go, or something like that. Where the PAC-C, I mean, really the next steps is really probably retraining, right? There isn't many other next steps if a staff is not, has a low procedure accuracy. Really the next step is really providing that feedback and doing any reteaching that needs to happen.
And should we like specify that in there,
No,
or just knowing that?
that's just the next step that you would do with the procedure accuracy check.
Okay, perfect.
Professor, so maybe I wasn't I didn't get here on time when if you talk about these or not, but so for tomorrow it says that you upload assessment tool to the group discussion board, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do we still need to do that if like Tara was talking about that for us has been really working the way that we communicating with each other, which is, so do we still need to do that or communicate how we're communicating?
Yeah, just communicate how you communicate.
Perfect, perfect.
And if your team has questions, just say, I mean, this is how supervision goes, right? I mean, you don't want a supervisor who dictates and micromanages how you do an assignment if it's, or do a work task if it's not working for them. If they have another way of doing it, I mean, that's part of engaging staff, right? Is allowing them to sort of tackle a task the way that makes sense for them. So I am not going to micromanage how you approach this assignment, because one, that wouldn't be modeling good supervisory skills. So,
Makes sense. Thank you so much.
yep.
All right, I think that's all of my questions for today. If I have any more, I'll just email you.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome.
All
Thank you
right,
so much.
mine too.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.